Hey guys, today we are talking about how to get a UK bank account as an expat. So first off, this is actually really tricky, so bear with me, but it's not impossible. So the question, of course, is how do you get a UK bank account? Well, once you are in the UK, you can apply either online or at a branch in person. And the actual application, the actual appointment and that sort of stuff is pretty simple. The trick is what you need to provide to get approved. Now, most banks will require certain documents such as your passport or a valid photo ID, easy, a recent utility bill less than 3 years old or a council tax bill, a recent bank or credit card statement, proof of studying in the UK if you are applying for a student account, and we will talk about students in a little bit. You guys are a little bit different. Some banks even ask for a proof of employment. Now, here's the problem. In order to provide these documents, you need to perhaps have a job, you need to perhaps been living at a property for 3 months, but in order to get a job and to get a property, you need to have a bank account. So it's kind of like what comes first. You want to get a job, but they need to pay you, so you need a bank account. But some banks won't give you a bank account until you have a job. You want to rent a property or rent a flat, but you need a bank account. But to get a bank account, you need a utility bill. So it's kind of like this really confusing loop. And the big question is, what comes first? So how can you get around this problem? Well, there's 2 ways. The first way is something that I did, and it may not work, but honestly, it's worth a try. So when I came to the UK on a youth mobility scheme visa, I went into the bank in person. Now, I happened to go to Lloyd's, which is one of the biggest banks, and honestly it was the one that was closest to me. So I went in and I had an appointment and I explained my situation. I'm an expat, I'm on this particular visa, I need a bank account, but I do not have a utility bill. Because one of the big issues is that banks want you to prove your address, but when you are a new expat, that can be really difficult. So Lloyd's actually got me a basic run-of-the-mill, just standard personal bank account without that utility bill. So I had my passport, I had my biometrics residence permit, I had my mobile phone, I had my email, I provided as many documents as I can, but I didn't actually have that utility bill or that proof of address per se. I've spoken to a couple of other expats and they were not able to do this anymore, and it may be that their policy has changed, but I do think it's worth trying, or perhaps calling your local high street bank, as you would call them, your local, the big bank, and seeing if they will do this for you. If they say no, or if you find none of those high street banks will get you approved without those documents, there is another option, and that is point 2, which is to go with an online bank. So online banks have really grown in popularity in the last couple of years, and I know a lot of British people who actually prefer to use these online banks rather than your traditional high street bank. Now, these online banks, of course, are solely online, but some of them are quite flexible, and some of them offer accounts to people who wouldn't be approved for a traditional account because you can't prove your address. Now, not all online banks are created equal, of course not, and not all of them will just give you an account without proving the required documents or proving your identity, but some are just a little bit more flexible than others. So for example, we're going to talk about Monzo, which is a pretty popular online bank here in the UK. I went onto their website and I've downloaded their requirements to get an account. So first things first, they're going to need a couple of documents, and the biggest thing is proving your identity. So Monzo says that you will need your mobile phone and a valid ID. They accept passports, driving licenses, national ID cards, and or biometric residency permits. Step 2 is simply to download the Monzo app. So of course, being an online bank, you're going to do everything either through the browser on your computer or through the app on your phone. Now, Monzo says they're going to ask for some information like your home address, your email, your phone number. Because they are a regulated bank, they're also going to ask questions like what you do for a living, what's your employment status, and how do you want to use this new account. Now, step 4 with Monzo is you're going to help confirm your identity. So what they do is actually quite interesting, and a lot of the online banks have started doing this as well. So Monzo wants a photo of your ID, like your passport or your biometrics residence permit card. However, they also are going to want you to take a selfie video and submit that to them so they can compare the photo of your, government issued ID with this selfie video to see if it's the same person. The next step is to choose what type of account you have. Now, of course, with online banks, a lot of them will offer your just run-of-the-mill basic standard personal accounts. Some will offer joint accounts, some offer business accounts. So you'll decide what kind of account that you want. And then you activate your card. So Monzo will send you a physical bank card that you can use, even though they're an online bank. And a lot of these online banks are doing something similar. Other options would be looking into companies like Wise, which used to be called TransferWise. Now, a lot of people have used TransferWise when transferring money, but Wise now also offers their own accounts that act like a regular bank account. So not only can you send and receive money, but you can use it as like a legitimate bank account. And Wise also has accounts with physical debit cards as well. Another option is something like a PayPal account. The UK, of course, uses PayPal for a lot of stuff. And while that is not a traditional bank account and it's not an online bank account, you're not going to have a debit card associated with your PayPal account, it may be enough to get you through at least the first few weeks or months. And this could just be a temporary measure. So perhaps you are approved for account with Monzo with the limited amount of documents that you currently have. You stay with Monzo for a couple of months until you have the proper documents that you would need to get approved for a high street bank, at which point you could then get that new account. Or you set up with an online bank and you end up staying with them. It's totally up to you and what works best. But I will say, I have friends who use online banks solely instead of the traditional high street banks. They are not all created equal. Some are certainly better than others, and you definitely need to do your research, but they are certainly an option. Now, in terms of pros and cons for a traditional high street bank like Lloyd's or Halifax compared to an online bank like Monzo or Starling, honestly, especially in the last couple of years, I would say that they are very close to being equal. Of course, with a traditional bank, you are going to be able to go in and speak to someone. But to be honest, in the last couple of years, banks here in the UK have been closing quite rapidly. Not that the bank itself is shutting down, but they are far less locations open. So even though you sign up with a traditional bank, you may not have a branch all that close to you. So it's just something to keep in mind. Of course, with the online banks, you do not have the option of going anywhere to see someone or to have an appointment. It is solely online, which comes with its own pros and cons. But personally for me, I was always a little bit skeptical of online banks. That feels like a bit sketchy, but to be completely honest, I have loads of friends and family who only use online banks now. So don't completely discredit it. It may not be right for you, but it really is a viable option. And realistically, I still have my bank account with Lloyd's. After that first application appointment, that first appointment in branch, I have never gone to a Lloyd's bank in person. So for the last 6 years, I've basically had an online bank because I've never needed to go into the branch. And the UK is getting better going contactless or going cashless. So more and more things are done online. Lots of places accept things like Apple Pay or paying with my Apple Watch. Like it's very accessible, and the UK is definitely happy to accept electronic type payments certainly gotten away from cash in the last couple of years. So if you are really struggling with a traditional bank, do not sweat. The online stuff is a viable option, and you may find that you like it more than a traditional bank anyway. Either way, I will put a bunch of links in the descriptions for both the traditional high street banks and some really popular online banks as well. So just make sure to do your own research on what's best for you and your situation. Now, setting up a UK bank account when you are an international student, maybe you're coming to the UK to study at a university, this is like a little bit tricky, but thankfully quite a bit easier. Typically, your university will be able to help you in getting a UK bank account. For most places, you're going to need your passport. You are not necessarily going to have your biometrics residence permit like an expat on a working visa would, but instead you can get a certain type of document from your university to help prove your identity, prove why you are here, and then use that to get a bank account. So typically this bank letter from your university will confirm your registration at the school, your home address in the UK, and your overseas address, and the fact that the university has corresponded with you at your overseas address. And most universities will provide this bank letter to you when you pass your visa checkpoint. So it's not typically something that you have to ask for or request. They typically will give it to you because they've done this a lot. The UK has, thousands of international students, so it's not something new. They know that you're going to need a bank account, and they can provide the documents that you'll need to get one. But if you have any questions about the application or about the process, or you need help getting a bank account, just ask your university. They will know everything that you'll need to do, and they'll be able to help you. Now, unfortunately, getting your UK bank account is tricky. Honestly, it's annoying. It's just one of those things that just is a lot more difficult than it needs to be, but thankfully it is not impossible. If you have a question, please make sure to leave a comment down below. If you're still looking for a job here in the UK, make sure to watch this video where I share my top tips for getting that first job in the UK. But until next time, I'll see you in the next one.